Okay, hi team. Okay, team.
Uh,
So, welcome to the session on a launch event on Advanced Cloud Security Governance Program. I'm so happy to welcome you all. And just for my introduction, my name is Krish. Most people already know me. For those people who just basically new to my session, so I'm a IT consultant. I'm a cloud computing security specialist, and I basically work as enterprise cloud security architect. And regarding my profile, I've been in IT for last 18 plus years on various domains, and from 2010 specifically on cloud computing and cloud security governance and architecture, uh, cloud auditing and assessment, cloud pen testing, and those kind of stuff. And also, I do training for various certification programs and customized cloud security training programs. For more information, you can visit my LinkedIn profile. So this particular event team is actually, a launch event for a new program which we have introduced, which is called as a Advanced Cloud Security Governance. So I will give you an idea about what exactly is this program and why this program is basically relevant and what is the outcome you can expect from this particular program. So generally, team, in talking about cloud computing, now you know that basically cloud is one of the most demanding technologies in the world, and basically many companies are going to cloud computing. And out of these things, when we are basically going for a cloud platform, there are two areas which we have to focus. One is basically about the implementation approach, and one is basically about the governance approach. For example, now let's suppose that team, when you're going for a when you're going for a scenario where you are deploying cloud in your organization. So you may have a lot of cloud engineers, cloud security experts, cloud pen testers, cloud architects, and cloud operations experts, and all these kind of people who basically can do that in your organization. So like the same way we have these technical people who basically do these things in the organization, we also need to have a set of people who are a bit, a different, working in a different level, which is called as a professionals. And for that particular professionals is basically where we have designed a course called as a Advanced Cloud Security Governance. So the first of all, what is a governance team? When you basically go to any organization, the first word which you will hear is what we call as a governance, right? So what exactly is a governance actually? So now let's suppose that I am currently working as a part of an organization. Okay, I'm currently working as a part of a any, like, let's suppose InfosecTrain, or maybe if I'm working as a part of any organization. Okay, so there is a goal for our organization, right? For every organization we are working with, we definitely will have a specific goal for our organization. And for accomplishing that goal, like for example, now if I'm working as a part of an organization, I have a set of employees in the company. I have a people who basically invest in the organization. I have a lot set of people who basically work for the organization. Like that, we have a series of people who work in the company, right? So I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing in my business is properly aligning with my organizational or my business requirements. Like for example, let's say if I'm running a banking organization, so I want to make sure that whatever I do, whether it can be adopting cloud computing, whether it can be adopting other technology, whether it can be anything which you are doing, it must be able to properly support our organization's requirements, right? It must be able to support our organization's business requirement. And that is the reason why, team, when you go for a business, we have a concept called as a governance. And as per, you can see as per the definition here, that a governance is a process of evaluating the stakeholder needs and conditions to achieve agreed upon objectives through the framework of policies, procedures, and controls. Let me give you an example for this, team. Now let's suppose that in my company I'm saying that I want to basically go to cloud computing. Let's say I want to go to Microsoft Azure, or if I want to basically go to Google Cloud Platform, or if I want to deploy my servers in some vendors, or if I want to build a new infrastructure. So whatever I am doing, I'm just spending a lot of money on that. I am taking a lot of effort on that. I am handling a lot of people's sensitive data. So in that case, when I'm handling a lot of people's sensitive data, when I'm handling a lot of people's sensitive information, when I'm taking care of a lot of specific personal information and all, I want to make sure that I have a complete security and everything for my data which I'm storing there. And also I want to make sure that in the perspective of cost, in the perspective of security, in the perspective of visibility, for all these things I need to have a assurance and clarity. And that is one major reason why we have a governance. So governance basically help us to oversee and basically drive the whole process in a business. So for example, now I'm when let's suppose that if I'm working in a banking organization, so I want to make sure I need to establish some certain specific set of policies and procedures and certain set of controls to make sure that I can drive my whole business properly in a proper step by step way. Plus, also, I want to make sure that team, whatever I am doing in my business, it is able to properly support my business requirements without affecting my without increasing the cost a lot, without compromising my security. And for all these things, we need to have proper governance. And obviously, as you all know that obviously as you all know that team, when you go for a governance, it's a set of operations, right? So for example, now let me give an example, team. Now in the organization, why do we have a password policy, team? See, one major reason why we have a password policy in the company is to make sure that, let's suppose that I'm just my employees or my customers are basically logging into the company portal, or basically as a employee of the organization, I log into my company portal or my applications and all. If I don't use a strong password, it can compromise the particular thing, right? Like the same way for all the things we are doing, for like the same way for everything: data access policy, data storage policy, encryption policy, then access policies, password policies, then PII policy. Like this, we have a lot of policies we have in our organization. So the reason why we have a policy is to make sure that team, whatever we are doing in our business is properly aligned with that particular governance requirements we are having, right? The ultimate goal of this governance is to make sure whatever we are doing is properly aligned with how the organization is designed to run, the structure and the you know to meet the proper business requirements, right? And that is why we have a governance. And as a part of the governance is basically where we have enterprise risk management, information risk management, and all this kind of stuff. But when you go to the cloud platform, the biggest challenge we have is that team, in the cloud platform, do you have only one entity called as your company? Like for example, now I'm going to a cloud platform called as Amazon, or now I'm going to a cloud platform called as Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud Platform or any cloud platform. Do we have that particular only one company there? No, right? When you go to a cloud platform, what basically happens that team, we have a lot of organizations there, plus we have a third party called as a cloud service provider, right? When you go to a cloud platform, the biggest challenge we are having is that team, we have a third party which is introduced to our business called as a cloud service provider. Now let me give an example, team. Are you willing to share your critical business data with somebody else, team? No, right? Obviously, no, because most people here, or almost everyone here, is not willing to basically share your business data or even your personal data with anyone else. In that case, when you say you're going to the cloud platform, okay, you're saying that you're going to the cloud platform. In reality, what happens there is that you are having a third party called as a cloud service provider. It is another company, right? It's actually another company. So you're going for a third party company called as a cloud service provider, and from that particular in that particular company is where you are storing your data, your applications, your customer data, and all the sensitive information. So obviously what happens, team, this particular governance can become even more complicated. Let me give you some examples here. So when you go to a cloud computing, definitely cloud computing heavily affect the governance. The reason is because, team, when you go to a cloud, the entire way of change, entire way of business, or entire way you're doing the governance is changing. Let me give you an example. If I'm going to a cloud platform called as Amazon, okay, or Azure, let's suppose if I go to a SaaS platform, if I'm go to a SaaS cloud service, do we have any visibility or control over this, team? When you basically go to a cloud platform, you don't have any visibility or control over the activities which is basically happening in the cloud platform, right? You're completely believing the the entity called as a cloud service provider. See, even if you say authorization authentication, that also is the provider is providing, right? You are completely or blindly believing them, right? That is the biggest challenge we are having. So like that, you are depending a lot on the third party audit reports. You're depending a lot on what the provider tells you that they are doing, right? Like my provider is telling me that they are handling my data properly. My provider is telling me that they are following these best practices, but there is no other way. I have to simply believe him, right? I cannot go to the cloud service provider and understand or basically physically go there and verify it, right? Like this, the cloud introduces a lot of complexities in the governance aspects. Especially, let me give you some examples. So first of all, we have something called as a cloud adoption strategy, right? So basically what happens, team, now when you are going for a business, okay, you're going for a business. So biggest challenge we are having is that when you basically say that you're going for a business, okay, sometimes it's not like you directly go to the cloud platform and you do things. You have a sometimes you have a hybrid model. Sometimes you want to utilize both the cloud and on premises. Sometimes you want to basically store some sensitive data in the on premises. Let me give you an example. In every company we have a cloud policy. In every company, when you go to a cloud platform, we design a cloud policy. In that policy, we clearly has to mention what data we want to take to the cloud platform, what data we want to keep in the on premises. Like the same way, there are a lot of challenges when you basically go for a cloud adoption. Now in the on premises, you have a lot of security controls. You have a firewalls, you have a physical access control, you have a monitoring, you have a encryption. But when you go to the cloud platform, the way you are doing things can be entirely different. For example, if you're telling me that, Krish, I'm having a sensitive information in my hard disk in my on premises, I can basically have a what I can have an encryption, I can have a key management, I can have a proper access control and all. But if you basically go to the cloud platform, you are depending a lot on the provider for implementing these things. Also, especially if you go to a PaaS and SaaS platform, this particular strategy entirely changes because you are depending even more on the cloud service provider. The third challenge, ensuring compliance. Because when you go to a cloud, let's suppose that my company has to comply with some regulations like or standards like HIPAA or maybe PCI DSS or maybe GDPR, etc. So my question is that, when your company has to comply with the HIPAA and when you're going to a cloud service provider and if he is compliant, does it mean we can skip the compliance, team? Let me ask you my question once again. So I'm going to a cloud service provider who is HIPAA compliant. Does it mean that I can skip that HIPAA compliance part? Never, right? So never, we cannot, because at the end of the day, we are the data owners. If something goes wrong at the end of the day, it's become our liability and our responsibility. It is never the responsibility of the cloud service provider. So ensuring compliance is one major challenge when you go to cloud platform, because data and compliance, data security and compliance always remain as the consumer responsibility. Then the fourth one which we are having is basically what we call as a managing the cost part of it. Okay, obviously, you maybe I have seen many people telling me this, Krish, when you go to cloud, the cost is very way cheaper. When you go to the cloud platform, cost can be super cheap. Okay, but what reality happens, the team, anything you're doing in the cloud platform is built, right? You go to the cloud platform, you're creating some servers, storage, databases, monitoring, whatever you're doing, anything you're basically deploying or you're doing, it's getting charged. Like for example, now if you're running something for 1 hour, you have to pay for that 1 hour. Even if you're keeping it idle, if you're running it, you have to pay for it, right? Like the same way in the cloud, the cost will basically spike like nothing. It's, the reason is because in the cloud platform, like for example, now you have a team in the company. So instead of a particular type of hardware, if you select some more hardware, the cost is increasing again. Instead of basically going for a basic hardware which you need, if you are increasing the hardware to a more, again you're charging a lot more, right? Like this, managing costs in the cloud platform can be even more challenging, because this is something which I have seen that when many people, many companies, when they call me for consulting, the first thing they say is that we have planned to go to cloud after reviewing the cloud cost and all. Like for example, now I will tell you a simple use case. One of my organizations, okay, went to the cloud platform, and they just go to the AWS pricing calculator, okay, pricing calculator, and they have seen that if they deploy this particular server, it will cost them around $300 per month. This is what they were expecting, because the server cost was showing that if they run this particular server for 1 month, it will cost them around $300. But in reality, what happened was the bill came almost around $850. So how does it happen? There is a lot of hidden things are there in the cloud computing, like cost of data transfer, cost of storage, cost of backup, cost of network bandwidth and performance. Like this, a lot of costs are there. So managing the cost in cloud computing is a very tedious and very complicated task sometimes. So that is one major challenge in cloud computing. Because if you go to on-premises, you can tell me, Krish, this is the things we can do for improving your cost. But in the cloud platform, one small mistake or one particular small change can increase the cost to almost double or more. Right. And the next thing is that you are completely depending on what? When you go to a cloud platform, you are completely depending on something called as a contracts, right? You are simply depending on the cloud service providers contracts. You are simply depending on something called as a, their supplier assessments and all. Like for example, now in the on-premises for compliance, you have a, or governance, you have a lot of stuff you can do. You can have a visibility, you can go and verify things, you can make policies and procedures. But if you go to the cloud platform, you are depending a lot on the cloud service provider contract. That means that if I'm going to my cloud platform, I have to have a effective contract and SLA with the cloud service provider. I have to precisely design an SLA and contract with the cloud service provider. Otherwise, if something goes wrong tomorrow, if my data is compromised tomorrow, if something get corrupted, if there is a downtime happens, I cannot complain to them, or I cannot take them to the court of law. So I have to have an effective contract, right? So contract necessarily is the most important thing we are having in the on premises. If you go for, you have a complete monitoring and visibility. But if you go to the cloud platform, can you go and do the auditing there, team? In the cloud platform, is it possible for us to basically go there and basically verify their infrastructure and everything, if they are doing proper or not? No. What we are doing is that, team, we are relying on the third party assessment reports. When you go to the cloud platform, we are completely relying on the third party assessment reports. That means there is a third party called as a ISO. There is a third party called as a NIST. There is a third party called as a CSA. There is a third party called as a AICPA SOC. There is a third party called as a PCI. So they come and audit the cloud infrastructure, and that reports you have to blindly believe. There is no option. You can go and directly verify things. So that lack of visibility itself make the things even more challenging, right? You are completely believing what the cloud service, you have to believe what the cloud service provider is telling you, and you have to simply go behind the contractual and SLA kind of stuff. So this makes the cloud computing even more complicated. This makes the whole cloud computing process even more complicated. And in fact, team, when the major reason why I have planned for this particular program is because I have seen that many people ask me for, means when we go for some corporates and all, right, these corporates, come to us and basically they ask me, Krish, if we do CCSP certification, if we go do CCSK certification, if we do a CCAK certification or AWS certification, will we be able to properly do this cloud governance? Will we get a complete visibility on all these things? Again, team, as when you go for a certifications, you are learning a lot of things, but definitely there is some more things, like some practical aspects we may have to map it in more effective, right? So that is the major reason why we have added this particular thing in this course and customized a lot of contents on it, and made it to an advanced customized cloud governance program. So I will discuss more about that particular program, but before that, team, one more thing I want to discuss is that, see, this is the biggest concern we have in cloud governance. Okay, so let me tell you one more thing. So this is what you have to be clear when you basically go to a cloud governance. First of all, team, now you are going to a cloud service provider. This is your organization, and your company is now going to a cloud service provider. So what happens, team, when your organization goes to a cloud service provider and he is getting these things from different other vendors, right? The cloud service provider is getting the internet from some other vendor. The cloud service provider is getting the virtualization from different vendors. The cloud service provider is getting some physical security from different vendor. The cloud service provider is getting the network from a different vendor, right? Like this, they are getting this from different vendors. So that is one major challenge. Supply chain is one major challenge. Can you basically have visibility over their uh, you know their vendors, team? As a customer, do you normally have a visibility on the cloud service providers vendors? No, right? That is one major challenge which we are having. We don't have a visibility completely over how the cloud service provider is delivering things to us. The next thing is that when you go to a cloud platform, we always say a word called as a shared responsibility model. That means that I'm going to my AWS cloud platform, I'm going to my Azure cloud platform. Everybody in the internet will tell you that, okay, Krish, if you go to cloud governance, you have a shared responsibility model. But are you sure that this particular shared responsibility model is limited to only the cloud service provider and cloud service consumer? No. Now we have something called as an advanced cloud security cloud share responsibility model. That means that we have a lot of entities: cloud service provider, cloud service broker, cloud service uh, you know uh, auditor. Then we have a cloud service provider, then so a cloud service consumer, then CSPM tools. We have a lot of companies are basically there in between you and the cloud service provider. As you're increasing your complexity in the cloud platform, governance can become even more challenges. The next thing, when you go to a cloud platform, normally we have a hybrid model, right? Like for example, in most companies now, what they do, they have something in the on-premises, something in the cloud platform. In that case, defining who will do what or who is what responsibility is even more challenging, right? Like your visibility assessment and scope, there can be a lot of challenges like this. There can be a lot of challenges like when you go to cloud platform. And that is the reason why team people always basically go for something called as a certification like CCSP, CCA, and all, to make their employees more aware of this particular kind of a cloud challenges. But to make sure that whatever challenges we are facing in the cloud platform, to have a proper visibility and idea about the cloud strategies in my company, that's the reason why we have designed a program called as a advanced cloud security governance. So this program, as I told you already before, this program is designed in such a way that this will give you primarily two benefits. First of all, this is basically something which will help us to get a complete understanding of the contents which you have to learn for your CCSK and CCAK certification. Like if you are a person who basically want to pursue the certificate of cloud security knowledge or CCSK and certificate of cloud audit knowledge and CCAK, this particular program combines all the benefits of this CCSK and CCAK program. Plus, you also will get a more tailored and customized curriculum, which will give you a more clear understanding of how to map this into what we are doing in real time. Like for example, let's say in CCSK, we are discussing about something called as a shared responsibility model and cloud policies. But in this particular program, you are learning the same thing, but again, you are learning a little bit more in perspective of how to do it in more practical. This is not a program which is going to discuss about uh, AWS or Azure or GCP or those kind of stuff. This is a program which will give you a complete actual practical insights and a proper expertise on securing your cloud environments in a more governance, risk and compliance approach, and to help you, also to help your team and you to prepare for a certification programs like CCSK and CCAK. So, who is the audience for this? Like, basically, for this particular program, who can basically join this program? So, team, as I told you before, this program is strictly designed in such a way that this will give you a complete visible visibility and approach on designing a proper governance strategy in cloud computing, including how to choose a provider, how to design a proper identity and access management strategy, what are the key cloud security challenges, and basically what are the key mitigation controls we can have for that. How can we have a proper incident response, how can we basically have a proper budgeting, how to ensure that we have a compliance based on legal and other factors. Like this, you can learn a lot of things when you basically come for this program. Plus you will also be able to prepare for the examination program like CCSK and CCAK. And this is basically for people in such a way that, like, if you're an information security professional or a cloud security architect or a risk management or anyone who want to adopt cloud computing for their business, can come for this. But I strongly recommend, if you are coming for this particular program, team, the primary thing is that you always make sure you learn at least, you must have a fundamental knowledge of at least one cloud platform. That is definitely recommended because that will increase your understanding perspective of this particular program.